Welcome to the USA, the land of the free and the home of the brave. This is an amazing country with many attractions, from amazing beaches and delicious food to fascinating history and culture. This nation has succeeded in half a millennium to become the first military, political, economic and technological superpower in the history of mankind. Whether you're looking for a fun-filled vacation or an educational experience, you'll find it here. From the grandeur of his power to his incredible history, you're sure to find something to captivate you. So what are you waiting for? Grab your passport and get ready for a journey to discover the history of the USA. The USA where adventure is just around the corner. Since the dawn of time, the US has had a long and vibrant history. 12,000 years ago, semi-nomadic settlements began to populate the territory, with a range of different languages and customs. The Anasazi was the first of these civilizations, who settled the area known as Oasis America, today's Colorado, Utah, Arizona and New Mexico. They left a lasting mark on the region through pottery, weaving and irrigation, and even mysterious symbols that have yet to be deciphered. In the 17th century, Spanish explorers introduced horses to the Great Plains, which transformed the nomadic lifestyle of the Indians and enabled them to hunt migrating bison. Meanwhile, tribes inhabiting the forests from the Atlantic to the Mississippi also developed a communal lifestyle, living in villages of wooden huts and rails. No matter the era, the US has been a land of diverse and vibrant cultures. The Iroquois Confederacy, or the Five Nations, was the most sophisticated pre-Columbian civilization in the US. This democratic league of five Amerindian tribes, Seneca, Cayuga, Oneida, Onondaga and Mohawk, wasn't just advanced for its time, because let's just remind, it was in the mid-13th century. It was downright futuristic, and in 1720, the Tuscarora became the sixth nation to join the party, proving that the Iroquois Confederacy was one of the most progressive and forward-thinking societies around. The Confederacy was a democracy ahead of its time, established with a 117-article constitution known as the Great Law of Peace. It was governed by a parliament of representatives, making it one of the oldest democracies in the world. But the Confederacy wasn't the only one working democracy. Other tribes like the Powhatan and Wabanaki also had their own confederations. Talk about a democratic revolution. In 1492, Christopher Columbus persuaded the kings of Spain to finance his voyage. Columbus sailed westward but did not reach Asia, but the island of Guanahani in the Caribbean. Spanish colonization of the America began, including territories in what is now the United States. Just to make a small parenthesis on the history of the discovery of America by Christopher Columbus. Let's remember that the guy started from Spain and wanted to discover Asia, so here, and ended up in the United States. I'm not an expert in navigation, but obviously our dear Christo was a better negotiator with the King of Spain to finance his trip than a navigator himself. Juan Ponce de Leon gave name to Florida in 1513, when he took it on behalf of the Crown of Spain. Until 1563, the Spanish sent several expeditions to explore, but without ever erecting any stable fortifications. However, the presence in 1564 of a large contingent of French Huguenots who built a fort at the mouth of the San Juan River posed a serious threat that led Spain to decide to establish a permanent military presence in the area. On August 28, 1565, Pedro Menéndez de Avilés founded the city of San Agustin. It is the oldest European settlement occupied in the US today. Only San Juan, Puerto Rico, surpasses it as the oldest city in the United States. In 1583, the daring and ambitious Queen Elizabeth I of England showed. She was a true trailblazer when she gave the green light to the swashbuckling Walter Raleigh to create a colony in what would later become known as the Carolina. Virginia and West Virginia. Raleigh was eager to take advantage of the area's potential for growing tobacco, so he formed the Virginia Company in 1606 to finance the first English settlement. Talk about a golden opportunity. In 1607, a brave group of English settlers had a bright idea. They'd sail across the Atlantic and set up shop in Jamestown, Virginia, with a charter from King James I. They had the go-ahead to establish the first permanent English colony in America. Talk about a quick turnaround. 7 months later, they were already turning a profit, with the first shipment of tobacco to England, arriving in 1614. A true success story. When, of course, we don't think about the fact that more than 400 years later, we're still fighting tobacco, which kills more than 8 million people a year. But at the same time, they did not know that otherwise, I'm sure, they would have gotten rid of it themselves, even if they had to draw a line on the hundreds of billions it still brings in every year. The Mayflower was packed with pilgrims who were determined to make the voyage to the New World and establish a colony based on their own religious beliefs. Although they did not know what they would find, they persevered and eventually landed in Plymouth in 1620. The determined group of Puritans then spread their wings and established a much larger colony in the Boston area in 1630. But these ambitious Puritans weren't content to simply stay in one place. Before long, they had already started migrating to Connecticut and beyond, in their own unique and determined style. English settlers were determined to make a go of it in the New World, and they did not let anything stand in their way. Jamestown was the first successful English settlement of the 16th century, and it set the tone for future colonies. The English continued to expand their influence, sometimes at the expense of the native tribes, until the 13 colonies were established. It really was the original American dream. The 13 colonies were fed up with the UK's high taxes, so they decided to fight for their independence. After a long and hard-fought battle with the help of France and Spain, they ultimately triumphed and declared their freedom in 1786. Once free, they quickly established the Constitution of the United States of America, which guaranteed democracy, equality, and freedom for the nation. After that, the USA set its sights on expanding westward, buying and annexing territories until they reached the Pacific coast. Talk about a wild ride. Even after they got their independence, they still had to fight a war of secession, just to make sure they didn't slip back into the UK's grasp. Talk about dedication. Well, okay, the war of secession wasn't really about that, but I'm getting there. The United States of America has come a long way since its inception, and it's all thanks to the hardworking people who were brought in from Africa and the Caribbean to toil away in the cotton fields of the South. Despite President Abraham Lincoln's anti-slavery stance, the agricultural South refused to budge, leading to the eventual secession of 7 Southern states to form the Confederacy. Although the Confederacy, or the South, was never officially recognized, its growth to include 11 states was a statement to the power of slave labor. In April 1861, the Civil War erupted when the Confederate States, led by President Jefferson Davis, fired the first shots at Fort Sumter in South Carolina. The Union was determined to uphold the US Constitution, while the Confederate States fought for the right to expand slavery. The Union resorted to the Anaconda Plan, a naval and river blockade, in an effort to contain the South. However, the South had no ships to stop the blockade, so they improvised with artillery merchant ships and captured Union vessels. On March 8, 1862, the CSS Virginia, an ironclad steamship, challenged the blockade of the Virginia coast. It seemed the South had the upper hand until the next day, when the USS Monitor, a Union ironclad, arrived to join the Battle of Hampton Roads. The battle ended in a stalemate, but it was a strategic victory for the Union, as the blockade remained intact. July 1863 was an eventful month for the Union, with the Battle of Gettysburg leading to a decisive victory over the separatist states. After 2 years of war, President Lincoln's signature on the Emancipation Proclamation in 1865 put an end to slavery and reunited the divided state. Victory has never been so sweet. When World War I broke out, most Americans were against getting involved, but President Woodrow Wilson wasn't one to shy away from a challenge. On April 6, 1917, he declared war on the Central Powers, and by the start of 1918, the US had sent over 1 million soldiers to fight in France, led by General John G. Pershing. Thanks to their contributions, the Spring and 100 Days offensives became known as some of the most decisive battles of the war. At the beginning of the 20th century, the US experienced a period of economic prosperity, but it ended in 1929 with the Great Depression. The United States wasn't just sitting around twiddling their thumbs when World War II rolled around. They kicked it up a year upon the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor in 1941, sending troops to support their European allies, and ultimately securing a victory over Germany on D-Day. But the US and the USSR weren't content to just let history stand. They decided to have a friendly competition to see who would have the most influence over the rest of the globe. This period was known as the Cold War, and it was one fiery race to the top. The Cold War was a first period of intense anti-communism, spearheaded by Senator Joseph McCarthy's second Red Scare between 1950 and 1956. McCarthy's campaign of unfounded accusations and denunciations resulted in others FBI leading a crusade of interrogations, irregular processes, and blacklists against suspected communists. On the international stage, Russia and the United States engaged in a tense arms race, backing the opposing sides in places like Vietnam and Korea. Finally, in 1991, the Cold War was ended with the dissolution of the USSR. On August 28, 1963, Martin Luther King woke the nation with his electrifying I Have a Dream speech in Washington, D.C. It was the beginning of the end for the Jim Crow laws, and with President Lyndon B. Johnson signing the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, it was a dream come true. On July 21, 1969, Armstrong uttered his renowned words, "One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind," as the United States achieved a major victory over the USSR in a determined effort to reach the moon, another dream come true. In the 90s, the USA flexed its superpower muscles and solidified its role as a leader of the free world. Then, after the 9/11, the USA was forced to go to war against terrorism, taking on terrorists in far-off lands and extremist groups who threatened our way of life. It was a difficult battle, but one that had to be won for us to sleep safely in our beds at night. As always, I hope that you enjoyed this time together. Let me know in the comments if you have any type of topic that you would like me to treat. Have a great time and see you next week.